I want to give you all a very warm welcome to this Greencoat Forum. I'm Michael Smith. I'm Head of Business Programmes for Initiatives of Change UK, based in this building, where Initiatives of Change aims to build relationships of trust across the world's divides. And this, of course, also means emphasising integrity, the honesty, unity of purpose, profound sense of service, which help to build trust. So I'm very grateful to welcome Joe Garner as our guest speaker this evening, who's going to talk about HSBC's commitment to what the bank calls courageous integrity.
HSBC was founded by Thomas Sutherland in 1865, and we was founded simultaneously in Hong Kong and Shanghai. And Hong Kong, where we stayed for the first 121 of our first 125 years. I say 121 because at 8 a.m. on the 8th of December 1941, the Imperial Japanese forces invaded the lightly defended island of Hong Kong. And on Christmas Day 1941, the Allied forces surrendered. Our chief manager at that time was this man, Vanderleer Greyburn, who'd been chief manager of HSBC since 1930. Vanderleer Greyburn made the most extraordinary decision in the face of that coming invasion to remain in Hong Kong as chief manager of HSBC. And whilst he was interned by the Japanese at enormous personal risk, he set up lines to supply both money and supplies into people who'd been interned in the prison camps. And during his time there, he smuggled telegrams out informing people of what was going on. And I'll read to you from one of the actual telegrams. It says, "Message received, carry on, good luck. Staff safe except Fielden, Bomfas, Matthews, Wiley, killed in action. Head office already advised. Staff requests make every endeavour repatriate self as only person who can clarify present situation. Message ends. Please reply." Vanderleer Greyburn's activities were discovered and he was imprisoned and in turn grew ill. And within a year of sending that telegram, Greyburn was dead. His decision to remain in Hong Kong was a decision of great integrity, a decision from the heart. So how have we got from a place where business was led with such integrity to an environment where there's so much evidence of greedy behaviours or of questionable judgments, where there's visibly unsustainable activities or unethical behaviours, which together are creating what I would describe as a vicious circle of mistrust? There is a perception in some quarters that business is acting only in its own interests. And because business lacks integrity, consumers need protecting. And we need rules and regulations to protect consumers from these businesses that will otherwise not be looking after their interests. And on top of this, there's a massive pressure for change. The internet has accelerated and amplified everything. There's a media fueling a sense of dissatisfaction with the status quo, which all makes it harder to see the wood for the trees. And then on top of that, first we had the politicians blaming the banking sector for the economy. And then we had the media with a sustained campaign against the financial services sector. And then we had the media attacking the politicians over the expenses scandal. And then we had the politicians attacking the media over the phone hacking scandal. The police arrested some journalists, and the media attacked the police over their handling of the riots, as did the politicians. And the net result is a massive sustained erosion of trust, when what we most desperately need to do is just stop and think. The world is a product of our thinking, and if we want to make change, we have to first change our thinking, which I think is a leadership challenge. It is the role of a leader not just to set strategy, but to set the atmosphere, to set the tonality. Well, rules are important, I believe. Rules are a very good shorthand for what is accepted behaviour. A speed camera also says, drive carefully, accident, black spot. And we also need rules to protect us against the small minority of people who genuinely can't be trusted. But there are also some important downsides to rules as well. Alan Greenspan described Sarbanes-Oxley, a set of rules that in itself was designed to prevent the recurrence of another Enron, as a nightmare as a result of the complexity that it created. But there's also a darker side of rule compliance, and this was proved so vividly by Stanley Milgram in 1963 when he did his experiment recruiting people where they thought they were administering electric shocks on someone in the next room. And what he did in the experiment is progressively dial up the dosage, and what he found was that 2/3 of people would administer what they know to be a lethal dose of electricity when told to do so by a figure of authority. People will draw comfort that by following the rules, they're doing the right thing. Again, I'm not arguing against rules, but rather that rules alone are not enough. After all, very few rules were actually broken in the creation of the financial crisis. If you ask a 7-year-old what is a bank, they'll say it's a building with a safe in it. And I'm inclined to agree. A bank is just a building with a safe in it. What makes us what we really are the human relationships, not just between customer, employee, but shareholder, pensioner, stakeholder, regulator. That network of relationships is what drives our economic engine. And what actually is integrity? Personally, I don't think of integrity as a value in itself, but rather like the sum, like system integrity. It does the whole thing work. To act with integrity is to be consistent between your values, beliefs, and actions. The opposite, hypocrisy, to say or believe one thing and then to do something different. The beauty of integrity is that it guides without the need for rules. And the entire financial system is based on trust. When we put money in a bank, we trust that we're going to get it back. When we, the lender, lend money, we are trusting that we will get it back. Take the £20 note as illustration. This costs about 3.5 pence to manufacture. But we give it the value of £20 because of the little line of text in the middle that says, we promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of £20. And because we believe that promise, we have a currency. A previous chairman of John Lewis said, to be your customer's favourite retailer, you have to first be your staff's. And I believe that it is organisations that demonstrate care for their employees that in turn reflects that on their customers, that drives loyalty, that leads to sustainable, profitable growth. I believe the key to running a business successfully is neither a relentless focus on the bottom line, nor an unbridled care for the employee, nor a blind adherence to the law, but rather an understanding of the key populations that a business exists to serve, and then balancing those often conflicting and competing demands in a sustainable way. So if it's that simple, why doesn't it happen all the time? I think they fall broadly into 3 main categories. The first is good old-fashioned greed. If we set up incentivization that creates a conflict between what they know to be the right thing to do and what is in their own self-interest, then we can't be surprised if we see some dysfunctional behaviours. If greed is one cause of people not living their values, so is its good friend fear. And fear can be fear of failure, fear of a superior, but fear is a powerful distorter of human behaviour. And third in this grouping is perhaps what I would describe as the arrogance that can emerge in corporations, particularly as people struggle on that greasy pole. And if I hear language about dominating competition or owning the customer, it's a warning sign to me that perhaps people might have forgotten a degree of their personal humility as they progress through the corporate world. Well, when I moved into this particular role a couple of years ago, I inherited quite a new team from all over different areas. And I was very keen to accelerate the process of us getting to alignment on what we wanted to do. So I divided the day into 15-minute sections and gave everyone a slot and said, come along and talk about what you love, what you fear, and what you've got in your pocket. And 3 things really surprised us about this day. The first is how emotional it was. People were told stories, there were tears, there was a lot of laughter. People talked of death, tragedy, loved ones, children. Very, very emotional. Second thing, and probably because of that, is the degree to which it stayed with us afterwards as an experience. And the third thing was, without particularly aiming to reach a conclusion, we found that we just did. And the conclusion was that the really difficult things that we face in our lives, we will face in our personal lives. They will be issues of family, of health. And if we can cope with those things in our personal life, we can cope with anything that the business world is going to throw at us. As long as we retain our whole human capability and continue to function as responsible adults. HSBC has recently restated its values as leading with courageous integrity, and underneath that being connected, open and dependable. And I'd like to say a little bit about what I think that means. Living with integrity is easy when the sun's shining, when you're ahead of your target, when your share price has gone up. When things are going against you is where it's more difficult. And the sense of courageous integrity is to try and capture the spirit that what counts is standing by your values when the pressure is on. And there are some positive examples of that. For example, it was HSBC who exited the market on PPI long before others. We stood aside from unprofitable mortgages in 2006 and 2007, and we haven't gone to the taxpayer for support. It also sometimes means doing the unpopular thing. And that might mean, for example, saying no to lending to a customer, even if it's an SME customer, if we are not confident that that customer will be able to pay us back. And it doesn't mean getting everything right. And I could point to our recent failings over NHFA, something for which we are deeply apologetic, and our continuing challenges in the US that we got ourselves into. And if I reflect on our failings, they are failings of where we have not lived our values. But hopefully what we've demonstrated through those challenges is that when we do get it wrong, we're quick to own up and to put it right. We've been very careful not to do mouse mats and T-shirts saying courageous integrity, but rather to embed it in our culture. If you have these values in your personal life, what we'd like our people to do is bring their whole self to work. We have developed a tool which people can quickly do, and it tells you the degree to which you are guided by principles, the degree to which you are guided by rules and policies, and the degree to which you are guided by concern for people in both your personal life and your professional life. And this is broadly what it looks like. And the really good news is that our people come across as being more principled than the norm on both their personal and their professional lives. But the watch out to us is that the chart on the right shows that people in their personal lives have a greater concern and care for people than they do in their professional lives. And it's precisely that we're trying to improve. Because it's firmly my belief that if we can be genuinely more guided by principles, it will, across the broader community, it will lead to better outcomes. I think the industry needs to take the lead in becoming once again more of a profession and less an industry. But I think the regulatory environment needs to evolve too. And I don't believe we need tougher regulation. I believe we need better regulation. Regulation not just focused on rule compliance, but supervision, oversight, the ability to look beyond at the bigger picture. Are we living our values? Are we leading with integrity? And are we bringing our whole human capability to work? Because think how much more can be achieved when one single individual puts their whole heart into a task. And we all do face a choice to stand aside or to be led by those principles like hope, fairness, loyalty, kindness, trust. And if we do, I believe that we might be able to reverse this vicious cycle of mistrust and create a virtuous circle where businesses make principled decisions that in turn lead to loyal customers overseen by a wise regulatory framework. And does this require a leap of faith? Absolutely it does, because a leap of faith is the only way that trust can be created, or in the words of Henry Stimson, the only way to make a man trustworthy is to trust him. When I was first preparing in this area, I got very curious about how a man makes a decision like that, how you make a decision to lay down your life for your employer. Did he have family? When did he send his wife home? I asked our archivist that question, and I'll read you her reply. He didn't. Greyburn and his wife, Mary, were initially held in the Sunwar Hotel with the other bank men and their families. The men were marched back to the bank in the mornings to assist in the liquidation of HSBC. In the summer of 1943, Vanderleer was imprisoned for his part in secretly smuggling funds into the internees at nearby Stanley Camp. He fell ill in prison but did not receive the medical attention he required and died on the 21st of August 1943. Mary saw out the rest of the war in the Stanley Camp. There she took on the care of one of the bank children, Michael Hyde, who was left an orphan aged 5 when his mother died in camp and his father was executed. After the war, she returned to England with Michael, whom she then brought up. Humanity does have a remarkable capability. We need only to release it.